Welcome to week 3 of EDU570. Topics to keep in mind for this week include the turbulence theory that we went over briefly from week 1. I will go over this more in depth on the following slide. When writing posts or your weekly assignments, apply what you have read in the Florida Ethics Pamphlet. This is a no-brainer information, but we tend to forget how specific the code actually is. Continue to think through the readings and so forth with last week's readings in mind. How would your answer change in the different ethical paradigms? And finally, what does it take to develop into a moral person, nature versus nurture? What are our students entering schools lacking that make this even more important? Week 1. Now let's think beyond what turbulence theory is to how it impacts an environment. Planes, moving, weather, out of control, not good feelings. Neither is a work environment embroiled in severe or extreme turbulence. With this in the back of your mind, think of your position within the organization. How would your actions change if you were an AP or a principal or a teacher? That's the notion of positionality. Your position within an organization will have a different experience with turbulence. Another key concept is the notion of cascading effect of the turbulence. Once something happens, the ripples of that specific action are felt throughout, but in different ways. For example, the new House Bill 7069 has great ripples which will impact public schools tremendously. Those ripples are still unknown at the teacher level. Keeping in mind, some organizations will do better than others based on how stable they are. And that goes into the whole notion of stability, because if you're in a stable environment, you have a tendency to gel and come together to push off that severe or that moderate turbulence. The next theory that was in the book is chaos theory. And chaos theory is such an amazing thing to actually study. It revolves around how things naturally operate in the universe, and what is destroyed will build back up naturally. Thinking more cyclical about the world. Chaos theory would explain that even in the darkest hour, everyone would come together to realign and move forward. But what if the turbulence level is extreme? Then the chaos theory outcome would likely shift. And what would naturally happen would have to be adjusted because someone or thing stepped in to stop essentially what was happening, essentially the chaos, by making an altering decision. An example of this would be shutting a school down instead of allowing that school to reboot on its own. Taking all of this in, we have to remember that these notions of positionality, stability, and cascading impact all relies on the level of turbulence. It is a very delicate balance that needs to be maintained. Your third assignment is the Florida School Leaders Chapters 4 and 5, which is another set of worksheet-like documents that need to be completed. It is important to remember to turn these documents in as a paper, cover sheet, paper, rubric, and also a reference page. Don't forget that. Keep in mind this week's readings. Begin by defining an ethical dilemma. Remember to distinguish between the dilemma types, right versus right or right versus wrong. I look forward to reading these papers. Your week 3 discussion is to provide guidance for how to apply the turbulence theory. Relate the guidance to your current work situation and then compare and contrast cascading and stability. This is such an interesting topic, and based on all of your differing experiences, I look forward to reading these posts this week.